All right, so today we're going to tackle one of history's great strategic puzzles, and we're doing it with a little help from the legendary naval historian Captain A.T. Mahan. We're going to explore how Napoleon Bonaparte, a military genius who basically conquered an entire continent, was ultimately defeated, not by a bigger army, but by the quiet, relentless pressure of sea power. So let's get right to it. Here's the big question. On one side, you've got Great Britain, a little island with less than half the population of France. And on the other side, you have revolutionary France, led by Napoleon himself, a massive empire with the most feared army on the planet. And yet, the island won. How? Well, the answer isn't on the bloody battlefields of Europe. It's out on the vast, open ocean. Okay, so to really get this, you gotta look at the main tools of this whole conflict, the British and French navies. Because on the eve of this titanic struggle, they were heading in completely, and I mean completely, opposite directions. The contrast between the two is just night and day. The British Royal Navy, it was a professional, disciplined, battle-tested machine. They had this deep bench of incredible officers who had spent their whole lives at sea, and it was by far the best supplied navy in the world. The French Navy, though, well, it was a mess. It was basically a floating version of the political chaos happening back in Paris. You had anarchy, mutinies, and ships that were just falling apart. So what on earth happened? Well, the French Revolution literally ate its own navy. You see, the most experienced officers were nobles, so they were seen as enemies of the revolution. They were either chased out of the country, thrown in prison, or worse, sent to the guillotine. Then, this revolutionary fever spread to the crews, who started having constant mutinies, just refusing to follow orders. Skilled sailors were replaced by political appointees who knew more about ideology than sailing. And on top of all that, the dockyards were in shambles. We're talking about ships being sent out to fight with rotting ropes and without even a spare mast. It was a recipe for disaster. And this quote right here, it just perfectly captures Napoleon's massive blind spot. The man was an undisputed genius on land, but he just did not get the sea. He thought naval battles were just like land battles, but, on water. He figured that pure guts and revolutionary spirit could make up for decades of experience and skill. This quote from Admiral Villeneuve, who, by the way, would later be the guy commanding the French at Trafalgar, is just dripping with sarcasm. He knew Napoleon was asking for the impossible. He knew it was a suicide mission. Want to see how this played out in the real world? Let's talk about Napoleon's ridiculously ambitious campaign in Egypt. This whole adventure is the perfect case study of how a brilliant victory on land can be made completely worthless if you lose control of the sea. So check this out. In July of 1798, Napoleon and his army land in Egypt. Just 3 weeks later, he wins this massive, legendary victory at the Battle of the Pyramids. He's the master of Egypt. He's on top of the world, right? But then, just 10 days after that, the British Admiral Horatio Nelson finds the French fleet at anchor and absolutely annihilates it at the Battle of the Nile. In one single devastating evening, Napoleon's entire situation is flipped on its head. His army is no longer a conquering force. It's a prison. They're stranded, cut off from supplies, from reinforcements, from France itself. So, trapped, Napoleon does what he always does. He attacks. He decides he's going to march his army overland into Syria and try to conquer the Ottoman Empire from there. But he's about to get a very rude awakening. He's about to learn that even hundreds of miles from the coast, British sea power could still find a way to stop him dead in his tracks. The story of the Siege of Acre is just unbelievable. So Napoleon marches his army up to this ancient fortress city. But a tiny British squadron, just 2 ships, gets there first. As Napoleon's army is showing up, these 2 ships spot the little French boats that are carrying all of his heavy siege cannons, and they capture them. So then the British sailors haul Napoleon's own guns into the city and use them to defend it against him. It gets even crazier. The British sailors, led by their captain, Sir Sidney Smith, actually fought on the walls to help push back the final French attack. Without his artillery, Napoleon couldn't break through, and he was forced into this humiliating retreat. Think about that. An entire army, led by Napoleon Bonaparte, was defeated by 2 ships. And that whole disaster at Acre, the thing that ended Napoleon's dream of a great Eastern Empire, was a direct result of that naval battle months earlier. See, without a fleet, Napoleon couldn't protect his supplies, he couldn't move his big guns safely, and he couldn't stop the British from popping up anywhere on the coast to help his enemies. He had been completely outplayed. But Mahan's argument is about way more than just a few flashy battles. The real war, the one that really choked Napoleon's empire to death, was a slow, grinding economic war fought across every ocean on the globe. Britain basically weaponized the ocean. How? Well, first, it used its navy to protect its own massive global trade network. That trade was the source of its wealth, and that wealth allowed Britain to fund other countries to fight Napoleon. They were literally paying the armies of Austria, Prussia, and Russia to stay in the fight. Second, they blockaded France, cutting it off from all its overseas colonies and resources, slowly strangling its economy. And finally, controlling the sea meant Britain could attack wherever and whenever it wanted. They could land an army anywhere, like they did in Spain, starting a war that Napoleon himself called his Spanish ulcer because it just bled him dry. Mahan himself had this incredible way of putting it. He said the Royal Navy was like a breastplate over the heart of Great Britain. Napoleon could attack the arms and legs, in Egypt, in the colonies, with trade wars, but he could never ever land a killer blow to the heart. As long as Britain controlled the seas, it could get hurt, sure, but it could not be killed. It was, in his words, invincible. So, what's the big takeaway here? What is the central lesson from all this, and why does it still matter so much today? You see, for Mahan, sea power wasn't just about having a bunch of big warships. It was a whole ecosystem. You needed three things. 1, a strong navy to fight. 2, a big commercial shipping industry to fuel your economy. And 3, a network of naval bases all over the world where your ships could refuel and get repaired. The nation that has all three of those things controls the highways of the world, and that's the key to global power. So back to our big question at the beginning. How did the island beat the empire? It won because Britain understood that the sea was the real center of gravity. While Napoleon was obsessed with conquering land, Britain was focused on controlling the system that connected everything. Sea power let them isolate Napoleon, drain his economy, and pick and choose their own fights. It was the ultimate long game, and in the end, it worked. And that really leaves us with a final thought, right? If the oceans were the key strategic battleground back then, what are the seas of the 21st century? Is it cyberspace? Is it the global financial markets? What about all those satellites in orbit? Mahan's lesson is timeless. Whoever controls the critical highways of their era, whatever those highways look like, holds the ultimate advantage. Definitely something to think about.